If you've ever found yourself wondering whether there was a way to get more done without burning out or overloading your to-do list, you are going to love today's episode because my guest, business coach, productivity expert, Chelsey Newmyer and I are redefining what it really means to be productive as a mum in business. Join us as she shares how to personalize productivity so that it fits your energy, your goals, and your season of life, not somebody else's morning routine. How to tell whether you're being productive, not just busy, how to tackle overwhelm before it starts to spiral, and how to design your ideal day and schedule so that it works for you instead of against you. Ready for a gentler, more aligned approach to getting things done so that you can work smarter, not harder, and have more time for the things that matter? Let's dive in. Welcome to the Unapologetic Mompreneur, the podcast for mums with an online business who are ready to take back their time, home, business, and self so they can restore the balance and thrive, both at home and at work, without feeling like they have to choose between the two. I'm your host, Sarah Dew, life and biz coach for mumpreneurs. I'm also a mum, stepmom, wife, introvert, breast cancer survivor, and your mentor for making a change for the better. I've learned how to go from surviving to thriving and unapologetically create a business I love and the life I want for me and my family without worrying about what other people think. And now I'm here to help you do the same. Because being an unapologetic mompreneur doesn't mean that we're selfish or that we don't care about others. It simply means that we are not afraid to show up as our true, authentic selves, to step into our purpose, do what we know is right for ourselves and the ones we love, and take the steps we need to take to make our dream life and business a reality. Join me each week where I'll be sharing all of my best tips and strategies, plus the occasional dose of tough but gentle love to help you feel empowered, motivated, and confident to take action so that you can become the mum, wife, biz owner, and woman you know you are meant and deserve to be. So, are you ready to unapologetically create a business and life you love? Let's do this. Hey, Chelsey. Welcome to the Unapologetic Mompreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You are very welcome. Looking forward to it too. I am super excited about everything we are going to dive into today. And I know you've got some amazing tips all about productivity, personalizing it to make it work for us, pushing past procrastination, and all that kind of good stuff. So, before we dive in, just in case anybody hasn't met you before, do you want to share a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, your family, and your journey that's got you to where you are now?
Sure. Yes, I'd love to. So my name is Chelsey Newmyer. I am a productivity and personal development coach, and I started my business back in 2020 because, like many of us, we had an extra like 30 seconds during the pandemic. So I thought, why not do something else with my time? And I've always been a nerd for kind of productivity and learning how to best, make what works best for us, and helping my colleagues do those kinds of things. So I was really excited to start a business helping people. And I realized that productivity has to be personal. I spent so much time trying to force myself into, the 5 a.m. wake ups or the miracle mornings or the planners and all those different things. And it, feeling frustrated along the way. And so my last straw was reading a book about productivity where it was a gentleman who wrote it who's like the CEO of some big company, and he talked about taking a nap in the middle of the day and having his driver prepare things. And I was like, man, what a life. But who's going to tell my boss at my 9 to 5 that I need to take a nap in the middle of the day, right? It just wasn't realistic. And so I wanted to make productivity, I wanted to make the things that we do personal and matter to the clients that I was working with. So that's what sparked the start of my business. I'm a military spouse, so we just moved. My husband's in the Navy, so we just moved to Washington State outside of Seattle back in October, and absolutely love it here. It's so beautiful. So I have my son. I have Nolan, who's 18 months old. So that's super busy and super fun. And we are just loving getting out in the beautiful Washington State area.
Oh, amazing. I love that so much. My boy is 14 now, but those 18-month-old, like, there's so many. It's great we get to do so much stuff with him now. He's older, but yeah, there's days where I look at him and think, I miss those days, those mummy snuggles, that all that time with him. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Yes.
amazing. Oh, that sounds incredible. And I totally get what you're saying about making productivity personal. And I know we're going to dig into that and you've got some amazing tips. But yeah, those books, have take an afternoon nap, get your driver to wake you up when it's done. And yeah, as if, and whether it's a 9 to 5 or we're mums building businesses, that we don't get that opportunity. And the 5
Sure.
a.m. time,
Yeah.
that doesn't work either. I tried that, and once my boy was in bed at night, he would sleep through. But early morning, there was no way I was going to creep past his bedroom at 5 a.m. without waking him up. So yeah, totally
Yep.
understand that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Really excited. So yeah, let's dive in. So talk to me about productivity and what that means with you, and how do you define productivity? What does that actually mean and look like for you?
Absolutely. So I define productivity as working on the right thing at the right time to help you reach your goal. That's my personal definition of it. And I came to that because working on the right thing means that it's goal aligned. And I actually just finished your podcast episode on exactly this, right? Like making sure that what's on our to-do list is actually helping us reach our goals. So it's the right thing. The right time is what time works best for you. So you may be a morning person, and that's when you can do that deep focused work. Or you're more like me and we're night owls, and you want to carve out that time after the kids are asleep and it's nice and quiet in your house to focus. But there's no right or wrong there. It's figuring out what works for you and then helping us reach our goals. And that's making sure that we have an end goal. We know tangibly what we're working towards so that each of those other parts of the definition work together. And we're spending our day not just checking off boxes, not just being busy for the sake of being busy or chasing things that aren't actually important, but we're really, again, working on the right thing at the right time that help us reach our goals. And I've been expanding on this even more lately with making sure that my clients really have their own version of not only productivity, but of success. Because so much of our culture, I think so many folks in around our age too, were just brought up in that hustle culture, right? And success is climbing the corporate ladder or making some amount of money or having some title. And if we just kind of stop and pause and think, do I actually want that? Like, is that actually what success is? Or does success look like getting to sleep in a little bit or having the time with my family to go grab lunch in the middle of the day? Or, what does actual success look like for you and making sure that that's part of the goals, that that's part of our conversation.
Amazing. I love that. And yeah, and I love that you shared about it being personal and doing what is right for us. And that is everything that this podcast and everything that I do is all about is what works for you and design it your way and forget what everybody else tells you that you should be doing because it looks different for everybody. And trying to put ourselves in all of those strategies that all the gurus are sharing it's not going to work. And you try and put yourself in that box and then you get frustrated when it doesn't. So that is such a breath of fresh air to hear you say that actually fitting it to what works for you and like even the leaning in of whether you're a morning person or a night owl and tapping into that and doing what's right. I absolutely love that. So how do we get started with making productivity personal? How do we start figuring out what is right for us? And because there is so much noise out there, we can spend 10 minutes on Instagram scrolling, can't we? And there's so many different, like, you must do this and you must do that. And if you're not doing this, then you're failing. And how do we get started? And what tips do you have for my listeners and people listening right now watching on YouTube that, thinking, yeah, this sounds great, but how none of those strategies work for me. So how do I start making it personal? How do I start making it work for me?
Yeah. My answer may be surprising, but it's just starting to pay attention. I think so many of us are kind of brute forcing our way through things or picking up and soaking in what we're hearing from all of those outside sources. And the reality is, if we just kind of pay attention throughout the day, a couple days a week, of when are you most energized throughout the day? When do you feel most awake and alert and focused? What are you doing during that time? What's the environment you're in that supports that? When are you getting frustrated, or when are you feeling tired or disengaged? When are you reaching for your phone more than you should be? I think spending a few days really paying attention to what your day is actually like and the schedule that you currently have, whether that's intentional or by default, and what's working and what's not working, is going to help you start building a more intentional life. Like I use the ideal day kind of framework, which many of us are just familiar with. So I use that language. And that's kind of like the end goal, right? I always joke like my ideal day would be spent on a beach somewhere, right? It wouldn't be spent necessarily like on my computer doing work. So that's not it, right? It's like the ideal kind of normal quote unquote day that we all face, right? When are you gonna, get your workout in? When do you have to get your kids to school? When are you going to work on whatever you need to work on or take care of your home, feed yourself, feed your family? All of those normal things that we kind of have to happen. And what makes sense for you? Maybe you're someone who realize that your meals are a mess because you're not meal planning. And so dinner is really stressful every night because you have no idea what you're going to cook until you pull it out of the freezer. And so you need to start meal prepping a little bit more. Or maybe you're someone who loves to cook and having a meal plan feels so restrictive. And so you just want to feel inspired. But that means you just need a little bit more time around dinner to make sure you have time to be inspired, right? And still get to bed on timer, for example. So again, there's not a right way or wrong way, but it's just really starting to pay attention so that when we're going about our day, we're doing it intentional. And if you're spending 10 minutes scrolling on your phone on Instagram, totally fine. But did you like mean to do it at that time, or was it just kind of this default, what thing that happened because that's what you always do at that time because you weren't even thinking about it. Um, so it's from there, then we can start figuring out, okay, is it the morning time? Is it the nighttime? What do you like about how you're doing certain things and start building towards that ideal day? And I also say we're building towards it because if you are, for example, in a 9 to 5, and maybe the ideal day is not in a 9 to 5, what kind of flexibility do we have to work with during the time that you currently have that we can start making it feel like an ideal day? And what do we need to adjust within like kind of the parameters that we're working with, right? Again, it's not that beach time that I feel like many of us would ideally choose. So we're working with the realistic parameters that we all have. And then what are those kind of small creative steps we can start taking to get towards that ideal day?
Oh, I love that. And yeah, absolutely. When you say about ideal day, you're not going to be thinking you're sitting at your laptop behind your desk, are you, when the sun's shining? I had that today. I'm in here with stuff to do, and we haven't had sun here for about a week, and it's working its way around. And I'm like, man, this is, I'm doing good, but I would much rather be out there in the sunshine right now. So yeah, I totally get that. It's definitely, and those ideal day exercises are good, but yeah, it's staying focused on actually we're talking about the normal day to day, getting the kids to school, how much time we've got between drop off and pick up, and how long do we need to plan for dinner. And I think that's a really good point that you shared about okay, sometimes we may think maybe we need to be better at meal planning. Because for me, one of my biggest stress triggers is if I've had a great day at work in the office and then I'm walking into the kitchen, which is literally across the hall, and then I don't know what I'm cooking, and my day has just tanked, and because it really stresses me out. But equally, I also love like experimenting in the kitchen and chefing, but I don't have time for that on a weeknight when my boys are going off to air cadets and everything in the evenings. I know that I've got to have that little window to do and actually meal plan then, and then save that prepping creativity time for weekends. So I think it's a really important point that you shared about actually tapping into what your day looks like and what makes most sense and what you need to plan and prep for, and just being time flexible with that, and just being intentional with how you're doing it. That's so, so important. I love that. So when it comes to putting that together and doing that, how do you know when you're then, once you've mapped everything out and you've got your pockets of time, what your ideals are, how do we know when we're then starting working on our day and the things that we're doing, that we're actually being productive rather than just being busy? Because I know that's something that a lot of my listeners struggle with, and my clients when I'm talking with them, and they feel like they're spinning their wheels all day doing stuff but they're not actually accomplish anything. So have you got anything or any like common warning signs that you see coming up all the time with your clients that like, so that we can start tapping into when we're being busy rather than productive, and how we can flip that switch?
Yeah, and So it really goes back to the goals piece, right? Like making sure we know what we're working on or what the purpose or intent is of those things on our to-do list. I also think about the building in the time for those things that just become distractions, right? So it's really easy to say, oh, just don't check your inbox. But that's actually not always super realistic for folks, right? Like I'm still in a 9 to 5. I need to check my inbox. Does it necessarily need to be the first thing I do? No, but I can't wait until the end of the day to do it because clients are waiting on me. So I just make sure that I have that as one of my kind of to-do list items. I put it in like kind of a power hour block and I don't spend a ton of time consuming, right? I don't actually subscribe to a ton of stuff, right? And if I'm not reading it, I unsubscribe. So I try to limit those distractions. But if you, and time blocking is a whole other conversation that we could have, but if you actually kind of map out when you're going to work on the things you're doing, you realize how few things we can actually do most of the time. And I think that's where people can get really frustrated is that they make these big to-do lists of like all the things they do, these big brain dumps and expect themselves to get that done every day and then just end up feeling really frustrated or defeated at the end of the day. So if we limit it to like 5 things because you know inevitably something else is going to get added to your plate during the day, right? If you give yourself that flexibility and that space and then map it out a little bit, it doesn't have to be rigid time blocking, but just say, okay, I'm going to work on this first. It's going to probably take me 30 minutes. You'll realize, oh, shoot, I actually only have time for these 5 things. So they better be really good 5 things. And then while my son is in the bathtub, I can clean out my inbox on my phone, right? And so we can be a little bit more kind of creative and flexible with it. But I think that's the kind of just that reality check would be my first step of okay, this is actually how much I can get done um, during a day.
And it's true because it's something definitely that it's taken me a long time to realize and learn to do is that I was always adding so much to my to-do list. And even now I'll catch myself and I'll write my list for the day and I look at it and I'll be like, Sarah, I know you know that you're not going to get all this done. Let's be realistic here. Chop it off. And then I'll cut it by half. And then I get to lunchtime and think I've still only accomplished the one thing that, out of the 5 or whatever that I thought I was going to do this morning. And yeah, it's really just being really realistic, isn't it, about how much we can actually do. And our plans get derailed and we get that call from the school that we're not expecting and everything else. And yeah, so I think that's really important is just being aware and having that time flexibility. And the time blocking can really help. You're so right. I think we could definitely do a whole
Mhm.
episode on time blocking. That is just, yeah, that's been such a game changer for me of just like, and it's again, like you said, it's not rigid, but I do tend to like map my time out in a few blocks across the day so that I know roughly what I'm going to be working on. And it's just really important to have that, isn't it? So when we're working through our goals and we're actually taking action and everything, and if we're not, and we find ourselves maybe in a bit of a spiral of being busy rather than productive, do you see with your clients that, or even with yourself, that sometimes you can start to feel overwhelmed by it all? Are there any warning signs there of, how to recognize when we're starting to be overwhelmed? Are there certain things that you see crop up? And then how can we tackle that? Because I know that overwhelm can really then derail us if we don't, if we're not tapping it as it comes in, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I can speak for myself for sure when overwhelm starts coming up is I find myself being very distracted, right? I'll be like in a meeting, but also have a tab open and be clicking around on things or like writing, like, and then jumping from one thing to the next. So my kind of approach or recommendations when you start feeling like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, like I don't, that kind of, I don't know, for me, it's like a little panic, right? I do
Mm.
2 things. The first is I just take a minute or a beat, do some couple deep breaths, right? Nothing is on fire. We are not like putting out anything important, right? Most of the stuff can wait just a beat for you to catch your breath. The second thing I do is I actually just take a little bit of time to just brain dump, to just get all of the things that I'm thinking about, all of the lists, right? I'm going on a trip. So that trip involves like 6 different lists. Sometimes I'll just list the lists that I need to make, right? Um, just get kind of all of the thoughts down onto a piece of paper just so that they don't they're not stuck in my head. And then I don't have to worry about forgetting it, which I think helps the spiral more than helps making a plan. And from there, you can kind of see like, okay, what's actually important. The other thing I do is you got a single task. It's so hard, right? Like it's so easy, especially most of us have screens. We got, like a laptop and then an extra screen, or we have, our phones in our hands. You have to just do one thing at a time. If you are in a meeting, just even if it's like a painfully boring meeting, just like try so hard to just engage, pay attention, take notes, do whatever you need to do, shut down that second screen, right? Put your tabs away, um, and block the notifications because you're you just need to kind of get back to what actually is in front of you at that moment so that you're not starting and stopping a bunch of different projects, right? You don't have the physical 100 tabs open on your browser and then the metaphorical 1,000 tabs open in your brain of all the half projects that are done. So really make your to-do list. And I have my to-do list is like a scrap of paper. Like it's like a recycled piece of paper. And it's hard to see it when it's blocked, but like this is my time blocking skills. It's like pen and paper. Like it is so simple. And I make what is on my to-do list is super specific. Like I had to write 2 agendas. I wrote exactly who those agendas were for. And it wasn't create agenda, it was create agenda for this person, create agenda for this person. Um, write this, do my tasks are hyper specific. And so that helps where I can even fold it up and say, okay, this is all I am doing right now and focus on that currently thing. And once the kind of moment and panic has passed, then you can go back to that brain dump and figure out, okay, what is actually important here? What's a priority? What do I need to do and in what order? But that first step before the spiral gets, I don't know, for me out of hand, right, is one thing at a time. Deep breath, one thing at a time. Finish a couple tasks. And once you get that momentum going of having something completed, it's so much easier to kind of carry it forward.
I love it. And yeah, that breathing is so important because once we start getting overwhelmed, you're right, that panic kicks in, our brain starts spiraling. That actually just sitting there for a moment and allowing ourselves to take a few deep breaths can make all the difference. Like you say, the house isn't burning down, it's not falling, the sky's not falling, we're okay. It's actually all right to take a moment. And then I guess, like you say, is just getting rid of that noise of the notifications and just being distracted and just focusing on that one thing. Because that temptation, isn't it, that we can feel like we're being busy and doing things when we're multitasking and we've got several projects on the go, but actually that just, and I've certainly learned from experience that just makes me even more overwhelmed. And it takes longer as well, doesn't it? Because we're flitting from one
You're
thing that we're
context
having to get.
switching. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so it just doesn't compute to do that. It makes sense. And like you said, even if it's just a really boring meeting, to just stay put and focus and be present. And it helps also if you're then fully focusing that you're blocking everything else out too, aren't you? And so it's easier to concentrate. I love that. That's so cool. So that brings us nicely onto the topic of procrastination, doesn't it? Because that is
Yeah.
one thing that can really derail our productivity. And it's a huge beast all in itself. So how do you see that? Is that something that you've struggled with? Do you see that come up with your clients?
Yeah, I love talking about this topic because it's so universal. I mean, everybody procrastinates and in some way, shape, or form. And I like to think of the difference between procrastination and laziness, right? So to me, the big difference is that procrastination is you know that that thing is important and you want to get it done. You want to write that email to your audience. You want to put the post out. You know it's important, but there's just some kind of friction, right? And laziness is more of like, meh, I don't care. I'd rather be laying on the couch right now, right? Like that's kind of the difference. And so procrastination can be really tough because you're like, oh, what I want it, I know it's important. I want to get it done. Why can't I make myself do it? So there's a couple different reasons that people procrastinate. Two of my kind of favorite to talk about are you have an unclear goal or end game. You don't know exactly what it's going to look like at the end, and so therefore it's hard to get started. And for many of us in the kind of the online space is like uh, perfectionism slash fear of failure, right? We're going to keep tweaking it. We're going to keep working on it in some way, shape, or form because it doesn't feel good enough or are afraid of what people are going to think about it or respond to it. So there are 6 reasons that we procrastinate that I coach on, and I have a resource for folks who want to take a look at that. But those are the 2 that I see coming up most often. And when it comes to that unclear goal, that comes back, kind of circles back to making sure that you have really specific tasks on your to-do list, because starting a podcast, for example, that's a big goal. It's also very ambiguous, right? Like, what's the podcast going to be called? Like, there's called, how often are you going to post on it? Are you going to have guests? Is it going to be just you? What tools do you need to make that happen? There's 100 different hosting platforms, right? So now we're making all of these decisions. And so really breaking those tasks, that goal, into like super specific tasks. So like, you're not putting start a podcast on your to-do list, you're putting decide the name, right? Like, you use ChatGPT to help generate 10 fun podcast names based on this topic, right? And then decide from there. And so when we break it down really specific, then you have that foothold to get you started. I also always use the example of sometimes people will procrastinate by doing other stuff, right? Like that productive procrastination. So your house is immaculate because you just don't want to write your email for the week, right? Like that kind of stuff. So the reason that we do that is because the dishes, for example, you see the task that needs to get done, you know exactly how to get it done, and then you can see it done. It feels really good. We get that dopamine hit. We know how to do all the steps, and then it's done. And that gets us that sense of accomplishment. Make your to-do list that easy, right? Know exactly how to get started, exactly what to do, and then you're done, so you can cross it off the list and feel that sense of accomplishment. But again, if it's an ambiguous start your podcast, there's no way you're going to be able to cross it off your to-do list in one day. So that's again for procrastination. And then for the fear of failure and perfectionism, that really just comes down to a lot of the mindset work that so many of us are actively working on, right? It's that progress over perfection, all those kind of things that we hear. But the more you do it, it's just the easier it becomes. And I always tease my clients that, man, if I had a troll, that would mean I made it. Right. Like, if someone is reading my stuff and feels compelled to respond, it means I've said something where someone's paying attention. And that actually kind of feels better than putting things out into the ether and hearing nothing. So, we can choose to look at that imperfection or that feedback any way we choose. And you can just choose to take it as feedback that means nothing, or feedback that gives you some insight and direction on where you want to go.
Brilliant. That's so true. And it's something that I see come up a lot with my clients, that they have that fear of failure of like, what if someone says like, it doesn't work and I say I told you so, or I fall flat on my face, or I look like an idiot, or I publish with a typo and I say the wrong thing. And it's all stuff that I've had to deal with and go through as a recovering perfectionist myself. And I totally recognize that, sometimes, it took me 4 years to start this podcast because I was worried about failing, and because it was on my to-do list for such a long time of start a podcast. And it was just so overwhelming because I had no idea how it looked. I had no idea what I was going to call it. And it is so key where it comes down to breaking things down into those baby steps and those mini goals, doesn't it? So that you can then put it on your to-do list. Even, it doesn't even have to be something as big as start a podcast. It could be publish a blog post. Well, you're not going to get that done in an hour. You've got to do the keyword research. You've got to come up with the title. You've got to put the bullet points in. You've got to do the editing, find the graphics. It just makes it too big and too scary, doesn't it? That it then causes us to go and do the dishes, because you're right, that is a nice shiny kitchen, and I know that I work and think better when my house is tidy. So what do I do when I'm frustrated and I don't want to work on something? I go and clean my house. And it's so easy to do when we're at home as well, because all of those distractions are around us. So yeah, I think that's such a valid point, and I love that you shared that. So thank you. That's really, really cool. So what are some of your tips with your clients when they're going through those things then that you see cropping up? What do you sort of suggest and share with them to help them start pushing past that procrastination, aside of like breaking the goals down maybe? But is there anything else, particularly with that fear of failure and reframing it? How do you sort of take them through it?
So there's two things that come to the top of my mind. The first is recognizing when you're procrastinating. So again, sometimes you may think, oh, but look how much I got done. My whole house is clean, right? Like, and so there's productive procrastination, or what I fall victim to quite often is procrastinating, which is I've rewritten my to-do list 3 times with all of the steps to start a podcast, but I actually haven't like just record the episode. Like you have to make the decisions to get started too. So just being aware of when you're procrastinating and kind of figure out why, right? Like what is that friction that's stopping you? Is it that you need to have a more clear understanding of what that end goal is? Is it that you're afraid of failing? Is it that you just don't like that particular task? So making sure that we identify that, and then you can come up with some strategies to help yourself kind of shake out of it. Um, the second actually is, maybe there's three, but be kind to yourself, right? Procrastination is, again, not an indication that you're lazy. It's not an indication that you don't care. It's an opportunity to explore what is holding you back on that particular thing. And we're not meant to be the same level of productive every single day, right? Especially as women, if you have a cycle, like you're just not meant to be the same every single day. So there's going to be days where you are crushing it and you're focused, and there will be days where it is a slog to get anything done. And we have to honor those days and not beat ourselves up in either direction, or expect to be able to replicate the exact circumstance of a good day every time. And I think the last piece of advice, especially when it comes to just showing up, is, again, it really just is comes that simple cliche saying of like progress over perfection, right? You got to keep doing it and remember that even the greats in your field have a really cringy start somewhere. And I think sometimes it's easier for us to show up in a space that feels maybe like maybe you're more afraid of what your family and friends may think versus like a group of strangers, or maybe it's the opposite, right? So lean into where you feel a little bit safer at first if you need to, and then just kind of keep building from there.
Awesome. That's great advice. And when you shared about the planning, I was literally like, oh, I'm busted now. That's totally me. I've
Oh
definitely
yeah, I have
been there.
big plans. It's the execution that's hard.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant. And what I'm really glad that you shared was the definite, the distinction between procrastinating and being lazy, because we can beat ourselves up sometimes that we're not doing things and actually think that we're putting it off and that we're just being lazy and that we're just not getting stuff done. But actually, we're putting it off for a reason other than that. And when we start digging into and getting behind what's actually going on, we can start addressing it, and then actually it's easier to recognize when it starts rearing its head again next time, isn't it? It's like, oh, here it comes again. What's going on? What am I doing? And usually with me, I've learned, like I said, as a recovering perfectionist, the reasons I was procrastinating all the time was it was usually either because I didn't know how to do something, so I would ignore it and just think, ah, it's fine, it will go away. But of course, it's the important thing that never did, like start a podcast. I was never going to figure it out and get it done if I didn't figure it out. And or it's just like just diving in and just going for it and just taking those small baby steps. But I think it's really important, and I've not heard anybody else make that distinction before, so I'm really glad that you've shared that, because we can beat ourselves up that we're being lazy, and actually it's not. There's usually something else that's going on, and when we can tap into that, that's when we can start moving forward, isn't it? So when it comes to,
Absolutely.
we've talked about like defining productivity, making it personal, and what we're doing, how to address start feeling overwhelmed and procrastination. So knowing how to handle all of that, what tips do you have for like actually then building our ideal schedule and actually putting our day together and mapping it out so that we can get those things done without overwhelming ourselves and not getting distracted and procrastinating?
And so for me, it comes down to like habits and routines, right? And making sure that we are really well supported, from a kind of a self-care perspective, as cliche as that sounds, but having a really good, you know, start to your workday. So I call it like my like ritual, like startup work ritual, basically. And it's basically I have my, like my coffee, got my list kind of mapped out for the day. Um, I kind of can anticipate what's going to come up. And and just kind of take a beat to like get myself kind of into my day and what I want to accomplish. And then, similarly with like a close up routine. So we feel like, okay, the day is done. I can move on to what's next. Um, so again, it comes back to really like, kind of paying attention and being intentional and with how you're choosing to use that time. And I also think about the not getting kind of distracted by the like those small little windows, right? Like a meeting ends 15 minutes early. I think that can either make or break a lot of people because if you can either choose to kind of keep barreling through and being super productive, and some days that will work, but some days maybe you just need to like walk away from your computer and take that extra 15 minutes as the win and a break, right? But in making that decision that supports your ideal day. So if you want more time and space to breathe in your ideal day, then take that minute to, take a breath. If you have an ideal day that is really hyper productive during this window of time every day, then yeah, we're going to want to keep moving forward and kind of keep moving through our to-do list. But again, it's making that decision and paying attention to your time.
That's so good. And it's just, again, just tapping back into what works for you, doesn't it? Like you said in the beginning, of
Yes,
just
yeah, I feel
understanding
like it boils down to it.
works for you. Yeah, it's great. We
It
literally
all
got a
comes
whole
back to that. Yeah.
circle. I love that. Yeah, it definitely comes back to that. And ditching that noise of what all of those, the pressures of you should be doing this and should be doing that. I think that's just a brilliant way how we've just literally gone right round and landed back there. That's really cool. And yeah, just looking at those strategies and like, are they going to work for me? Probably not. How can I tweak them? What's right for me? This has been so helpful. I literally could talk with you about this all day. I've got so many other questions. So I think we're going to have you back. That would be a really cool. Maybe we should do a session on time blocking as well. I'd love to hear your
Oh,
strategies
that
and
sounds
how you
great.
use time blocking. That would be
Yeah.
really awesome. Before we wrap up, and I've got one question I always love asking all of my guests, and we can share all of your. I know that you've got a brilliant freebie and everything as well. But is there any like one final nugget or one piece of advice, wisdom that you'd love to share before we go on to those?
Tara, I think it's going to be coming up with your own definition of productivity is the best place to start. What does productivity mean to you? What is your definition of productivity? Because from there, you can you can make the schedules, you can make everything else work around that.
I love that. That's great. Because we talk about defining our own definition of success, but actually doing our own
Mhm.
version of productivity as well, and then working to that. That's going to help us get to where we want to with our definition of success, isn't it? That's amazing. Thank you so
Yes.
much. So tell us about your freebie. You've got a personalize your productivity toolkit. What is that all about and how can people get hold of it? And I know that you've got a podcast too as well, haven't you? So yeah, tell us about all of the things and where people can find and connect with you.
Sure. So the toolkit actually has a bunch of different resources. So you'll get access to like a folder with a bunch of different resources, including a guide on how to create that ideal day and how to kind of prioritize the different parts of your life to help fit within that ideal day. A whole guide on procrastination. There's a fun quiz in there with some resources. There's all kinds of cool stuff for folks to enjoy in that toolkit to help them personalize their productivity. And then my podcast just changed names a couple weeks ago. So it's now called the Alchemy Lab because my goal is to help people through a transformation, right? And through this moving away from productivity for the sake of getting things done and kind of that hustle to more towards getting things done to help you reach your goals, whatever they may be. And the kind of that transformation and that identity shift of being a type A hustler like I was to someone who is living, just a kind of an easier, softer, slower life. And so my podcast is called The Alchemy Lab, and I love showing up there. So it's definitely where I recommend people visit there. It's on Apple and Spotify, and then on Instagram at Chelsey and Coaching.
Wonderful. It's all sound amazing. Definitely go and grab Chelsea's toolkit. Go and check out her podcast. We will make sure that all of the links are in the show notes. Wrapping up, the one question I love asking all of my guests is what does being an unapologetic mompreneur mean to you? And how do you show up unapologetically every single day, both as a mom and as the boss of your business?
Well, such a big question, but I show up unapologetically because my son has met every single one of my clients because that's just life sometimes.
I
and
love
he
that.
comes along, and it's part of the gig of working with me is you're gonna inevitably meet him along the way when he's home from school. So yeah, I think that, and I was so self-conscious about that at first, and all my clients love it. So I just leaned in.
Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Love it.
Yep.
That is amazing. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chelsey. This has been so, so good. Like I said, I could definitely have chatted with you for hours on this. And I know it's one that all of our listeners are gonna really, really enjoy. We'll definitely have to have you back again as well. We'll get that sorted and in. Thank you so much. It's been a real, real pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
So that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening and for watching on YouTube if you've been tuning in there too. And I can't wait to chat with you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining me for another installment of the Unapologetic Mompreneur podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I would love for you to leave me a rating and a review so that other mompreneurs can find this podcast too. Here's to unapologetically becoming the mum, wife, biz owner, and woman you know you are meant and deserve to be. I can't wait to chat with you in the next episode. Bye for now.